All right, go.
Okay, we're back. I am really sorry, everyone, if there is anyone still there. I apologize. Apparently, I have no skills whatsoever when it comes to technology, and my internet crapped the bed, and evidently so did my brain when it came to technology. But anyway, we're back at it anyway. So where were we? So John, we were talking about EMF and the kind of the side effects from it and stuff like that. So yeah, you guys use the EMF for base readings and stuff like that, and that kind of thing. Sorry.
I say we generally use them for the base readings, as I said, and then we'll monitor as it goes. But if you actually look into the history of EMF and the logic behind it, there's an excellent book by a friend of mine, Brandon Masalo. It's called The Ghost Studies. He's an Oxford-trained parapsychologist, and in it he explains the EMF of the human body. And it's, when we see a spike, people are like, oh my gosh, this thing hit like 20, 30, and people are on TV, they say that's a spirit. But realistically, no, because theoretically, the human body, our EMF is maybe 1 to 2 at max.
Right.
But it's very complex EMF. I'm paraphrasing the book at this point. I do recommend anyone who is interested to actually pick up that book and read it. It is one of the better books I've found in the last 30 years. But no, he mentions how if you get a spike, you want to look for something that's going to be like maybe 1 or 2, a low spike, because that's usually where you'd be around the range of what the human body would put out.
So so in regard to obviously we have our own network of EMF, and we produce that as well, and it kind of ranges as well when we have physical exercise as well, because it basically we create more energy in our body as well. So how, obviously with those kind of variables, with our own body's EMF, and with the Wi-Fi from your phone, even if you turn your phone off, there's someone walking past you in the street and stuff like that. And you've got the cell towers, you've got Wi-Fi in a house, you've got the car driving past with the radio blaring, and you've also got ambient radio frequencies, which it also picks up on EMF as well. How do people deter how did people deter around that in relation to things that are paranormal compared to that?
You see, that's the fun part, like trying to determine some of these things. That's why EMF, unfortunately, I hate to say this, EMF is not the most end-all, fix-all for ghost detection, right? We can't say for sure an EMF spike is a ghost with just a spike. Generally, what you look for is something else to happen with it. I mean, if you have an EMF spike and you catch an EVP at the same time, even though, like you said, it could be possibly UHF frequencies coming back, bouncing back. It could be anything like that. But then we have something else that ties to what we just caught. So we have more than one thing to look at.
Absolutely.
Is there much parallels in that? Is there have you seen a lot of patterns over the years in relation to that?
I have seen patterns. Like usually when I look at EMF, I've tried the K2 experiments, things like that, but the K2 is so sensitive, it'll go off for static. I had one of my guys actually wore corduroy pants to an investigation one time. Every time he walked, it was just going off like crazy. So we try to use ones that actually give a reading. And personally, I prefer using one of my newer ones, which is the weighted meter I mentioned earlier, because it measures natural EMF versus weighted EMF. And at that point, you can actually cancel out certain levels, which would be your baseline levels and ambient natural levels. So that way you get a more accurate reading of what's actually coming in.
Yeah, crazy.
I don't know if Peter stalled again.
Can you see me now? Sorry.
We can,
yeah, we can see you.
Sorry, my internet's starting to crap out again as well. We'll get there in the end, John. Sorry. Anyway, I'm totally off track now. So So yeah, well, in relation to when you investigate, what are your tools of the trade? What are your main go-to kind of equipment that you take with you guys?
Personally, I love using the audio. EVPs for me are a big thing that I like to look for, because that's something where, you know, we actually get something tangible we can actually hear, and you can tell like it's a voice saying something, not just like gurgling or anything like that. Or and again, the EMF, as I said, is not a foolproof method to say this is a ghost. So we can't really, we can use it and say, look, this is odd, this is kind of cool, but at the same time, we can't say that's a spirit just because we don't have enough proof of that. So, but when we get an EVP, especially a Class A EVP, then you have to look at it and say, like, well, where did this voice come from?
Yeah.
So for me, that's more where I would look. I also like using the cameras, because if we can catch something, and not orbs, by the way, we all know how that goes.
Yeah.
Excuse me. No, but like on our last case for Into the Haunting, we actually had an interesting incident at the Courtyard Restaurant here in Ottawa. It's one of the most haunted buildings in the city. That's the one good thing COVID allowed, was for us to actually be able to get in there and investigate it, because normally they're so busy with weddings and things like that, they can't get us in. But we were able to go, and we actually caught something in a window that we spent 2 hours trying to debunk, and we couldn't debunk it.
Can you tell us what it is, or is that for the show?
As much as I'd love to tell you guys, people are gonna have to wait and see when it comes out.
You're gonna have to wait. Can you tell us about your show? So tell us what's going on with that.
Well, Into the Haunting is a show we put together. We want to focus on a lot of the lesser known places. We've done one episode we did. It was at McDonald Williamson House. We've done Higginson Tower. These are lesser known historic sites that have hauntings. Like everyone knows from the city of Ottawa, the Ottawa Hostel.
Right.
One of the most haunted places. The Courtyard's another. Manotick Mill, which we're actually at next week. So everyone knows those ones. So they're not worried. But the McDonald Williamson House is so far out. It's about an hour and a half east of the city. It's in a very remote area, and their visitorship is very low. And there's times when this house has been in danger of actually being, it's a National Historic Site, but it's been in danger of actually being destroyed because they don't have the visitors. So we want to focus on those so that people can actually visit these hidden gems before they disappear.
Right. And get them some attention, and maybe they don't need to disappear with enough attention.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have the same problem here in BC, and the government, obviously where I come from in the UK, like the government kind of huddles over these heritage sites and they look after every single one. But here in Canada, it's they're just left to the dirt, and there's no, particularly in BC, there's no sense of heritage here whatsoever. It's no sooner as the building gets put up, it gets taken back down again, and the government don't care in relation to preserving it and stuff like that. That's why what you're doing with places like that, it is crucial to get that kind of exposure, and it could lead to other things for them to keep them afloat.
Exactly. I mean, we've done multiple events out at McDonald Williamson. We've had all kinds of people, all kinds of experiences, a lot of fun. The place has a lot of history, and everyone who's been there has loved it. And they've said, actually, since we were there and visited and done some of our events, their visitorship has actually tripled.
Wow.
Pre-COVID, of course, but
yeah. Of course. So how many people do you have on your team? Are they, and are all of them in the show as well?
On the team, we have about 10 to 15 people. I like to keep spares just in case, because life happens. We can't always make it out every time. Right. Most of the team will be on the show. We do have a couple of people that don't want to be part of the show, so they generally stay off camera.
Yeah.
But no, anyone watching the show is going to pretty much see most of the team at one point or another.
Okay. And is there any possible air date for this?
At the moment, because of COVID, our everything got pushed back. So we were filming last year, and then all of a sudden COVID hit, shut everything down. So we're kind of in that limbo, waiting to see when we can fully open up and when we can get back to actually getting the full season finished.
It's funny, right? Like the States have, you know, The Walking Dead going on, all of the new shows are, and here's Canada.
I know. sorry, A. This is
Right?
No, but I know what you're saying. Like, we do see a lot of that where there's a lot of new shows coming out of the States. A lot of the ghost hunting shows are back on air from down there. But
Yeah.
a lot of the Canadian ones are starting to come back now. But at
Yeah.
the same time, a lot of the locations they're still worried, because a lot of locations I do, especially because they're lesser known remote ones, we're usually dealing with elderly people that have an attachment to the building or something like that.
Right.
And they are, in the case of McDonald Williamson is one, the friends of McDonald Williamson, they're the ones who oversee the building. And every single one of them, they're seniors that are retired. They're elevated in age, we'll put it that way. And they have to be incredibly cautious. So they actually have had to shut down, even though most of Ontario is open and they are allowed to open, they're actually staying closed. And we're seeing that a lot with a lot of locations here in Ottawa.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. It must be hard though. Like if you are trying to get in or whatever, like are they part of it, or do they stay in the facility when you're investigating, or?
They do. Yeah. We tend to like to have them there.
Okay.
Because my background is parapsychology. And one of the things about parapsychology is the psychology itself.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for us to get the activity, we want to have the most normal circumstances in the building that we can, other than the fact, you know, you got like 6 people running around with a bunch of electronic equipment and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like even when I do private homes, people are like, well, we can get the dog out, we can get the kids out. It's like, no, we want all that here. We want to see what's happening on the daily basis, to see if that's what's causing what could be what we would call RSPK, or what most people would refer to as a poltergeist.
Right.
But
Okay.
if the individual that is actually causing this isn't in the house, well, everything's going to be quiet and we can't really say what's going on.
Right. But do you find it that it does interfere with the EMF, not EMF, like
The investigation?
No, just the EVPs and stuff like that. Like that was one of the things that we had found the most, was that it really interfered with the EVPs, and then it was really difficult to differentiate, right?
We don't find it actually does. A lot of times when we're doing things like that, especially in a private home, we're telling people, you know, they have to be quiet. We coach the family so they know. And I mean, even when you got younger children, you coach them. And half the time, by the time we get there, those younger children have gone to bed. Usually they'll go to bed. Sometimes I have seen, you know, parents would send like a baby, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, to stay with their grandparents or something like that for the night, and that's perfectly fine. Yeah. But we generally don't find any contamination like that, because, like I said, we coach the family on what we're going to do and how it's going to work, and they eventually become investigators for the night with us. So
that's pretty.
And
cool.
a lot of people, I find a lot of people actually enjoy that. So
they'd like to be a part of it and participate, and I mean, after all, it's their home too. So
and the other thing too, these things are happening to them, not to us. So we're a guest in their house while we're doing this. And these things, if they're happening to them, may not happen to us. So we want them there with us, so that if something happens, they experience it and we're there to document it. Right.
Have you had any crazy experiences while doing that with a family in the house?
A few. we have had a few. I won't deny. We've had some wild ones before. We've had a couple times we were in a location in Prescott, and we actually had there's a bit more history to that. Like, I myself actually do work in the realm of demonology from time to time, and this house did have a demonic attachment involved in it. And basically we did have books and stuff being thrown at myself and a few of the others. So
Oh crap. Okay.
They got quite interesting, that.
Yeah, I can imagine. And was that a normal experience for the homeowners?
Yeah, believe it or not. For them, they said this is pretty much what happens.
So with that case, what did you how did that transpire? How did you conclude that case?
How did we conclude it? Is that what you're asking? How did it end?
Yeah.
Basically, well, I do have a Catholic, an old Roman Catholic bishop that I work with, Plato Angelakis. I believe you guys may know him, may have talked to him at some point.
Yeah,
He actually, yep, I brought him in with me when we went there, and at the end of the day, he actually performed the minor rite of exorcism to clear the house. And the family said the next day they heard the doors in the kitchen, like all the cabinets, slam. Then the back door slammed, and the house has been quiet for the first time since the 1970s.
He let himself out.
Well, he was told to leave, so he had no choice. But no, they've had there's been no more activity actually ever happen in that house since then. But before that, nobody had actually stayed in that house more than 6 months.
Oh wow.
Jesus.
Oh wow. It's just too much for them. Well, can you imagine moving into a place and all of a sudden books are flying at your face like all the time?
Oh, the homeowner was saying they had books flying, cupboard doors. At one point she told me that there were about 15 people there for a birthday party. And this one rocking chair just out of nowhere started rocking on its own and got progressively faster until everybody just screw this and ran out of the house.
How did you interpret that it was actually a demonic case in relation to, say, a typical poltergeist case, which are rare, but they feasibly do happen?
In this one, we found a lot of history tied to the area, and most of it centered around the very vicinity of this house. And on top of that, while we were there, we encountered a lot of I don't like to give too much up, because usually when you start talking about demonics, people start saying, "Oh, I've experienced this," and they start to think, like, everyone knows the scratches of 3, if you get a hot spot instead of a cold spot, things like that, and then people start to think, "Oh my gosh, I'm getting this," and that's when all of a sudden everything becomes a demon. There's a lot of other things that go into it, and some of those I won't go into, but yeah, we did get the hot spots, we did get the manifestations of feelings of dread, just the heaviness of the house. I mean, you've been through some of these, Pete. You know what I mean by those.
Yeah.
And then when we had books start flying at us, we kind of just put 2 and 2 together at that point, and we're like, okay, we need to deal with this. And not to mention, the other big one for me was the fact that this has happened to multiple families since the 1970s.
In the same dwelling?
In the same dwelling.
Wow.
Awesome. Good.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So, with you yourself, in disregard the show, what are your favorite cases? What kind of cases do you like the most?
I actually like the historical landmark cases, to be honest with you. Like, I love going into a place that's got a lot of history, a lot of background. We get to learn about that. We get to check it out. You get to see some cool stuff. I mean, a lot of times we go into places, they actually give us access to areas that, the general public may not see. So for me, that's the greatest thing, to be able to go out and see this history, like see these areas that normally you wouldn't see. And it's so cool.
We have a question here. How do you and your team distinguish malevolent over demonic?
Generally, it's the one way we look at that is you can generally tell a spirit from something demonic. The biggest one is that a spirit needs to draw energy to manifest, where a demonic will create its own energy to manifest. So that's why, as I mentioned, the hot spots. A lot of times when it's demonic, we see hot spots instead of cold spots. And the activity will also be much more frequent and much more violent.
Right. Okay.
Like you might see, say, a malevolent spirit might knock a knife off a table. A demonic spirit will throw the knife at you.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually funny, because that's how I've told, I've mentioned stuff to clients before in the past. They'll say, "Oh, my coffee cup flew at me." And I was like, okay, there's a difference between the coffee cup moving half an inch as opposed to it picking up and throwing.
Exactly. And
we get that. Like, which one was it? Because a lot of people, they get scared, and what moved half an inch, in their head, it was like, it blew up and it did this and it did that. It's like, getting them into that area of, okay, well, which one was it? Like, let's take a step back and let's really think about it. What exactly happened?
Yep.
And
No, we get that a lot too when we get cases come to us. Like I have teams that send me cases they believe possibly demonic regularly. And
right.
yeah, it's the same thing. We have to look at it and say, like, did this get thrown at you or did it just like come towards you and fall?
Exactly.
And
Right?
I mean, a lot of people in the moment, they're so freaked out. They're like, that was just thrown at me.
Yeah.
But trust me, if it fell on the floor in front of you, it probably wasn't thrown at you. But if it hit the wall behind you, that's a big difference. And at that point, we start looking at it like, say, and even some poltergeists, the energy is that strong. But generally, it'll be a one-off, right? So you'll see that once. But if this is happening like 2-3 times a day, happening like daily on end, then we have to look at it and say, okay, something more powerful is going on here. That's where we start looking at that.
Exactly. Okay, so if you were to pick a place anywhere, where would you go? Where would you investigate?
My family funeral home.
Oh, is that right? Would you go back? Yeah.
I've always wanted to go back. I've always wanted to go back there. Now that I have the gear and the knowledge, I've always wanted to go back, check it out and see, because so many people have seen my great grandfather there. I want to go back and say hi and just see what happens. Because I don't think any other investigative team, anything like that, has had an opportunity to investigate a location where it's a family member that they know that showed up and has that kind of connection. So I'm curious to see what that connection would be if I was to go back in there and try to conduct EVP sessions or try to get my great-grandfather to come out and say hi.
And is that not a possibility for you, or would it be?
We're working on it.
Okay.
We have been working on it for a while. It's just it is a small town, and it is hard sometimes to get in touch, especially where it's now part of the Public Board of Education, I believe. I'm not 100% on that, but it's very hard to figure out who I have to talk to gain access when I get down.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, something like that. I mean, what a special investigation that would be. That would be like amazing, especially if he presented himself, came forward, and you've had multiple reports of him appearing. So it's not that one-time thing for just this little boy. This is something that he's appeared for many people. So
exactly. And just to have that personal connection to the place is what I would love to actually go and visit and just see what happens.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
It's funny you should mention that. My grandmother's house. She lived in this house for like probably about 50 years, and the house was built in about 1880. And before, it was kind of a voided house, and it was never really used. And then she moved in there, and she lived there constantly for like 40 years with my grandfather. And I lived there before I immigrated to Canada. I lived there for about 6-7 months, and it was it's a peaceful house and stuff like that. And then when she died, I went back to England. I emptied the house out, and we put the house up for market and sold the house. And it was within that time that I got on the plane and got back to Canada. My nan's next door neighbor can hear my nan and my granddad arguing next door.
Oh, wow.
And she phones me up she texts me all the time saying that I can hear your nan next door. I can hear your nan next door. And I'm like, what kind of funny cigarettes you've been on, sweetheart? It's funny because my grandfather was very he did abuse my nan, but not physically, but mentally. And it does run true with the things that she's hearing as well, with things that my mum told me that used to go on between my mum and dad as well. So it's like you say, John, like I would love to go back and investigate my nan's old house. Like totally, it would just be that. Not to hear her screaming and crying and stuff like that with my granddad, like shouting down to her and stuff like that, but just to kind of have that, perhaps that connection, just to hear, if there's an intelligent, if there's an intelligent form there, just to hear her say hello to me and stuff like that, or even my grandfather as well, that kind of thing. It makes of what we do more, it puts more value in what we do, knowing that there's that element there that we've got those people still around us.
And it adds that personal touch to it as well. Is the one thing that a lot of times, we go into places where in historic locations. We're in somebody else's house. We don't have that personal connection.
No,
To have that
totally.
to have that personal connection to it, for me, would be the ultimate experience for doing this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Going back to like you didn't really run to kind of the misconceptions about demonic attacks and stuff like that, and it's quite funny because there's media puts a lot of attention on things that because through movies and stuff like that, the actual the actual demonic cases that happened to themselves.
I don't know if we lost him for long, so I'm just gonna Cody does have a question. He says, another question: how do you and your team prepare for cases involving demonic activity while ensuring the safety of your team and your clientele?
Each case is different, to be honest, and a lot of the time what we do, we go into every case looking to find natural explanations before we even think of demonics. That's
Right.
the thing. We always want to find like something like what's going on. I want to find the answer to what's happening. And I'll try to find logical, rational explanations like environmental factors, things like that beforehand. And I've had a lot of times where I've been sent in by a team that was there before thinking it's demonic. And then when I get there, it turns out we find a natural explanation. So that's happened a lot. But if we are going into something, there are certain rules when you're involved with the demonic, and one of them is the rule of innocence. So as soon as that rule gets broken, that's when I get my team out and we bring in a specialized team. And at that point, we're actually working with the clientele to try and tell them, something has drawn this to you. There's a reason for this.
Right.
And we're giving them spiritual guidance. We're giving them help. We're giving them all the help we can. So, and at the same time, we're trying to figure out what we're dealing with, so that way we can find a way to resolve the issue.
Yes. There's a lot of, do you find that a lot of people jump to the demonic? I mean, I remember we used to have that quite often, and that seems to be the first thing that people, jump to. It just seems to be the go-to. It can't be, Grandma Betty. It's got to be, Satan's spawn with some really long Latin name.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I do find people tend to jump to that, but you have to understand, most people aren't used to like what we do as paranormal investigators. They aren't used to seeing all that. So a lot of the time they'll immediately jump to what they've seen in movies or things like that. And it's the fear of the unknown. That's one of the biggest fears we have as humans, is the fear of the unknown. So when they get the unknown, they immediately jump to something very bad. And for most people, that's something demonic. Like we had one case where a young I believe he was 16. His parents called us because they thought he had some demon attacking him. We went there, we talked to them. I brought in a psychic medium with us, and the medium actually said, and after speaking to the young lad, I actually found out that he wasn't being attacked or anything. It was more just light brushes on his leg. And our psychic medium picked up that it was actually his grandfather that was saying, "Hey, I'm here. It's okay."
Yeah.
But for him, he saw this as something frightening and immediately jumped to, "Oh my gosh, there's a demon attacking me." So yeah, we do find that a lot. I mean, it's so big in pop culture with horror movies, and even on the ghost hunting shows now, a lot of the time they're talking about demons and things like that so frequently that it's in people's heads. And it's one of those monkey see, monkey do, where immediately everyone's going to jump to that conclusion.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm back.
What's that?
I'm literally sitting on top of my router, so hopefully I'm not going to lose you now. Jesus,
it's going right. It's good. Like talk about aligning the chakras. Hey, that's just like
I know. It's because we're talking about demons. That's what it is. A demon's suddenly gone down my phone line. I get that's what I was going to stroke upon as well, John. It's the fact being is the misconceptions about things like the scratches and stuff like that. It's like, oh, people wake up and it's like, oh, I've got these 3 little scratches down my arm. I think to myself, well, and the things I've seen as well, like I've seen documented as well. It's like, you know what? If I was a demon, I wouldn't put little hairline scratches down your arm, sweetheart.
No, exactly.
Put your freaking arm off.
Yeah. Cody says, thank you. I only asked because of the fact that investigators can go their whole careers and never see a case of true demonic activity due to its rareness. So,
Yeah, he's absolutely right. Believe it or not,
absolutely,
he is
yeah.
absolutely right. There are so many. Even Bishop Plato, if you ask him, will tell you that there are exorcist priests that can go their whole life and never see an actual true case of
Right.
it.
Yeah.
So it is incredibly rare, and that's why we have to be very particular when we're looking at this to not jump to conclusions.
Yeah.
There's-
I find too, sorry, Peter, I didn't mean to.
Right.
I find too that, in some cases, when people start creating or reacting as though it's demonic, or they're bringing in all kinds of, who knows, whatever it is, people that are saging and cleansing, and I got to close this portal that's coming out of your toilet and all of this other crap. through that process alone, it can bring in more activity, and that's what people aren't seeing. Instead of asking a professional to come, or even let's not go into the professional, somebody who has tons of experience with this, a solid team that has had years of experience behind this. Instead of calling that through, they seem to kind of run to wherever it is that they go to. Oh, here's a website, let's just call them. And then they end up in more trouble. And we've talked about this several times on the show, where it's like, as long as you got the shirt, you must be a ghost hunter. So
it's funny. There's only been two authorized exorcisms in Canada over the last decade. That's come from that have been performed by ordained exorcists from the Vatican.
Yeah,
and there's been a few close to, but it, like you say, John, it's rare, and again, though, but people's interpretations are different per culture in relation to the term demons as well. So that there's that overlap as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's another thing you got to keep in mind. The people the family that you're working with in those situations, you have to respect their views. I mean, I wouldn't bring a Catholic priest into a Jewish home. It's not going to work.
No. So before we close down the show, tell us your scariest story.
Yeah, scare me, John. Scare me.
I once woke up and saw my wife without makeup.
Yeah. I was going to say that was going to be
every
man's
horror.
Out the drink.
Yeah, no, that was for no. I'm kidding. The scariest one for me. We actually had one case where we actually had a woman. She was possessed. This was one of those, and we heard a knife in the kitchen. So, yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
I don't like to go into too much about that because I know the family doesn't like me to talk about that either. But no, it got quite hairy for a little while, but the family is all right. They're safe now. I still talk to them on it regularly, so they are all good. But no, it got a little hairy for a little while.
Okay. I guess that would be. Would it? Was that something like you heard it over EMF, or you heard it?
No, we heard it. Like we heard the knife being scraped along on the counter and such. So then one of ours went in and saw her with it, and then we had to basically forcibly remove the knife from her hand so that way we could just keep everybody safe.
Right.
Jesus.
Yeah. That was probably the most frightening thing I've ever seen. Other than, we did have one other time where scared my investigators. Didn't bother me. We had a rat running around in the basement. All the girls, none of the girls wanted to go down, but
I was going to say there was one of our cases in Vancouver where we got chased out of a woman's house with a pair of scissors, but she wasn't possessed. She was just gone in the head.
Yeah. Other than that, I will say, I can tell you, there is one time I did scream when I was on a case. We were at the place we were at. It was a mobile home out west of the city in one of the cottage country areas. he had a watch that kept going off every 15 minutes. It was a broken watch, so it wasn't anything paranormal. I was trying to figure out how to shut it off. I turn around and I see two big glowing eyes looking at me through the window. I scream and lose it. The cat jumped down and took off. I was not, and the worst part is upstairs they were conducting an EVP session with the cameras running everything upstairs, and they actually caught me screaming, followed by "You stupid cat!" And then it was just insane laughter for about 20 minutes on the tape. But
did you do one of those little girl screams where you're like, ah?
I'd like to say no, but my team would probably say, "Yeah, he's lying."
So where can people reach you? Where can people contact your team? Where can they
the best way to contact us, we're on all social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. We can also be reached through our website, www.ottawaparanormal.com. That's generally the best way to reach us. The Into the Haunting website is in progress. So they can also reach us through that when it goes live, but it's as I said, it's still in progress because of everything that's been happening. So
do you guys do YouTube channels or anything like that? Or
we have one, but I haven't really put much up there because a lot of our cases, I don't like to put them out, and confidentiality for us is big. And especially living in a government town like I do, a lot of my clients actually say we prefer like you were never here type thing. So we get a lot of that.
We don't show up in the mystery machine.
Yeah, we're like that in Kamloops, but it's not really a government town. Everyone's just here a bunch of arseholes, but that's a different story.
Have you seen Parliament Hill?
Yeah.
It's just down the road, believe me.
I know, well, Justin Trudeau's in there, so enough said.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, as I said, we get a lot of people that are very conscientious about that, especially with the fact that it is a government town. Like we have provincial, we have municipal, we have federal, and everyone's worried about the perception of, what people are going to think about it. So we get that a lot. So yeah, a lot of my stuff I don't put up on YouTube. And to be fair, a lot of the stuff we catch, I mean, in the 25 plus years I've been doing this, there's very little audio and video that I've actually caught to make it interesting. And I don't like to just put up orb videos or things like that. I mean, there's a few up there from when we started. But yeah, I had someone watching it at one point. And they put up a bunch of orb videos, and I was just like, "Oh, why?"
Yeah, I always get a laugh when I meet people, and they're like, "Oh, you did this? You do this? I've got all these pictures," and it's like, I don't want to see your vacuum dust. It's okay. I don't.
You probably had it yourself, John. You get this random email every now and again from someone saying, they're like, "Do you want to see our pictures? Do you want to see your ghost pictures?" We're totally baffled, and you know what? You slowly inside the way that they've described these pictures, you're gonna get like a picture of Harry Potter, like dead or spinning around on a freaking.
Yeah, you're gonna see Reagan from The Exorcist, right?
Yeah, you're gonna see everything. But then when you get it, and all it is just like freaking dust. And you're like,
dust or something else. I had one I got where this is a woman I spoke to multiple times. I told her, look, I tried to explain orbs, dust, moisture, all that stuff to her multiple times. But I mean, sometimes people they don't want to listen.
No,
it's sad, but I mean, there's only so much we can do.
Yeah.
And I remember she sent me one day, and she goes, "I just took this in my backyard," and she's like, "Look at all the spirits." I look at my window and it's snowing.
I was gonna say. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's like they're not spirits. It's the light reflecting off the snow. I mean,
I think one of the hardest things to do is convince somebody that their house isn't haunted.
Yeah. That's the thing as well. And Eve, like going back to the old thing as well, when you get these pictures and you just try and explain to them that it's dust, and they're like, thanks very much, and it's just like, well, you just got in contact with me for my opinion, and it's I can basically replicate what you've just sent me if I go outside and just throw mud in the air, dry mud in the air, and take pictures of that.
Well, not to mention, like, after this many years we've been doing it, we've probably seen thousands of those pictures.
I know, but then they turn around and say, "Oh no, but this isn't like a normal orb," and I'm like, "Why? Like define it, and like you can see little faces in it and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that one too, but yeah, the periidolia effect where they had that.
It's not even that. It's not even that, John, and they're just no kidding.
It does happen sometimes, yes, and that's the worst part. Sometimes I find people actually are more scared of finding out they have some sort of mental illness, and they'd rather it be a ghost.
Right.
I come across that a lot.
They don't have to deal with the mental illness. The ghost is apparently easy.
They feel the ghost. They feel the ghost is more acceptable than saying they're having a grief issue or they're having an anxiety issue or something like that.
Pretty much. Okay, well, we're gonna have to wrap it. We've gone over, and we're 10 minutes past over, so we're good. John, is there anything you'd like to add to the audience?
For everyone out there watching, it was great to see you. And as we've mentioned tonight, remember, always look for the natural before you jump to the conclusion of a supernatural.
Yes, absolutely. Very good advice. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everybody watching. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Cody. Take care, buddy.
Next week.
See you, Cody.
Cody, I will see you in a few months. Okay, I'm going to come down to the States and see you guys. So I'll looking forward to it. Okay, well, thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we will have another show 6 p.m. Pacific time next Friday. Take care, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Take care.